Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to Penetrate Radio. I am Lucy Baldwin, and today I have my whole crew. I have Danny Granaroli, Holly Kiefer, Layla Matthews, and we are going to talk about, we're going to start by talking about capacity, and then we're going to see where it goes. Because capacity is really important in being a human, doing this work, doing EK, feeling. So when we talk about capacity, we mean the capacity within yourself to feel what you're feeling, to stay present in your body and not just like, whoop, like escape your body and dissociate, and capacity to hold and stay present in in situations of high intensity, high sensation.
I think it's also like speaking in terms of capacity, like what's the word I'm looking for? It's neutral morally. Like we have this thing about like we should have lots of capacity. Like I should be able to do this. And actually capacity is entirely neutral. Like it's just your lived in state at the moment. And reminding myself of that fact has been one of the most healing things in somatics. It's like, oh, I didn't have the capacity for that. I should have. No, you shouldn't have because you didn't. And that's okay.
Yeah, and it definitely is fluid, like it changes. I mean, for me, definitely, I notice like if I'm hungry, my capacity is like really low, or if I don't sleep enough. There are ways that we can take care of ourselves to have greater capacity and greater ability to literally handle life. And also, sometimes it just does get it. Sometimes it's just low. Sometimes we're just like already in our feels, or we just don't have the bandwidth to like have a lot of sensation just like bombarding us.
And Danny was bringing up earlier that, not only is the amount of capacity you have neutral, but capacity is neutral in what it can contain. Joy is our ability to experience joy is as much an issue of capacity as our ability to experience, withstanding, confronting shadowy material in ourselves.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that because I think you guys were speaking to something really beautiful and I want to hear someone talk about it.
I nominate you.
On the interwebs, you'll see this a lot lately when people are talking about what's going on in the world and how bombarding and challenging it is. And Lucy was mentioning that there is this sense of you have to stay appalled by the world and the hardships to stay engaged, to feel like, oh, I'm doing my part. I think there's that moral code going around is I have to do my part by being as horrified by everything that's going on in the world. And a lot of people are coming in and saying also joy is resistance, that being able to be in your capacity for happiness, joy, rest is resistance. And so Layla was saying, the more that you can be in any sense of heightened state, the more you are building your ability to be in like the pendulum swing of the heightened state. So if, for some of us, actually, joy is a harder heightened state than being in like stress. And I'm not sure what word to use here. For some reason, the word terror came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What were you
Grief.
saying? Yeah, grief, hardship, struggle. Thank you. But so building one side of that pendulum very often helps build the other side of the pendulum too, so that we can be more present, more comfortable in our joy, in our boredom, in our pain, in someone else's joy or boredom or pain, or, whatever flavor is your upper limit of capacity.
Yeah, and I want to say like part of capacity also, at least in my experience, it is my emotions. There's a huge emotional element to it, but it's also like sounds, smells, like bodily sensations, temperature, like all these things. If it's loud and bright and I'm uncomfortable, then that could be like my whole capacity. It's just like going to just coping with my environment. And this like brings up something Layla was talking about with children. Like children, sometimes they reach their capacity and then they just shut down. And there's nothing you can do for them besides just like, and this is a big thing with babies. Like babies get overstimulated. And this is, I've had 5 babies and I consider myself a bit of a baby whisperer. And I just see how parents they can't figure out why their baby's crying. So they're like shaking things and they're like shoving things in the baby's face and they're trying to like distract the baby or stimulate the baby. And it's like what the baby needs actually is to be probably swaddled, brought into a dark, quiet place. They need to like feel you against their skin. They need to just be held and like contained and to like feel your breath. But we think that stimulating them in a new way is going to somehow help. But it's like, no, they have such a little baby capacity and they don't know what's going on. They don't know what they're feeling. And I think that is kind of what happens to us sometimes. Like, we don't know, we don't even realize that the noise is chewing up our capacity. So then when something comes up that, especially like something emotional, then suddenly we're just like overtaken. And I have definitely experienced moments where, like I'm around my kids and it's really loud and I'll get an email and it's like it's one of those emails that's like a gut punch, something really like stressful. And then suddenly I can't deal with anything that's going on around me and I have to just remove myself from the room. Yeah. And
Okay.
that's totally normal. And it's totally okay, right? I think the real thing here is to recognize like, oh, I'm at my capacity now. And so I need to take care of my nervous system.
Yeah, and I like what Layla was saying about that, it I can't say it as eloquently as Layla was, but it was something along the lines of pointing out that it's ridiculous to try and force people to have more capacity than they have. Not only will it's not never going to work because like you said, it's the nervous system and you can't act well, you can to some degree bypass the nervous system, but it's going to come back to you. And especially in this sort of work, the more you do this work, the more you are actually in relationship with your nervous system. And I think the more nuanced you become in that relationship. And thus, this work becomes like that much more potent. Like you were saying, Lucy, you can't actually do this work without feeling the sensations in your body, without feeling your emotions. That's just not possible.
Yeah, yeah, you have to be willing to feel to even do a EK at all, just even get in the door with it. You have to. So it's all about just like being willing to feel what's in your body and not dissociate, escape, distract. And this we also talk about resources, like being resourced, right? It's like how much resources do you have for yourself in order to kind of like help you cope with any given situation or in any given moment. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Like you can be well rested and you can be well fed and you can be like healthy and you can, all these things that we can do to resource ourselves and have, like earplugs available. Like I bring earplugs with me everywhere I go because I definitely get overstimulated by sound. And also just like knowing yourself. I think a lot of us, like I don't know, I'm just thinking of my mom. Like, my mom also gets overstimulated by sound, and I've tried to tell her this, and she doesn't understand what I'm saying, and it's like, I see her, something loud happens, and she, like, kind of snaps, and I'm like, "Mom, it's the sound, like, it's just your" but she doesn't, like, have the skills yet to kind of understand what I'm saying, so she doesn't connect the rise in cortisol and just, that whole experience.
Okay, a really curious question just came up for me. So you were talking about tools and resources, and I think existential kink and the meditation or general shadow work, but I'm just going to more specifically narrow it to this practice just for the question. It can absolutely be a tool and a resource, but I'm wondering if I'm imagining we've all had the experience of times that we've used it as a resource and then times that we've like maybe I'm just speaking for myself, used it as a way to bypass or tried to use it as a way to bypass. So I'm curious if any of you have had that experience and how you have been able to like refine that over time to tell when it's time to use EK as a resource or time to just sit with what's happening or go take a nap or do some breath work or, or take a walk or something like that.
Okay, sorry. I got distracted because Layla was like coming in and out and it seems like she fell off, but hopefully she's logging back in. You're saying using EK as a versus using it as like an escape.
Or, yeah, or maybe it's clear to say knowing when you have the capacity to use EK and when you don't have the capacity to use EK. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I do think this is an important question. Something that does come up for people is like, how do I know if I should use EK on this thing? And I do think that, well, my answer to that is always like, if something's really triggering for you, like maybe don't try EK yet. Maybe just like sit with that sensation of that trigger because there you can get into, then I feel like it does turn into you're trying to escape the trigger, right? You're trying to escape because trigger is just sensation, right? It's like trigger is something happens, I have a big whoosh of sensation, and it's suddenly so much sensation that it often blows out our capacity, right? That's and then we lose our ability to like stay centered in the moment. And if that's happening and we are kind of beyond our capacity already, probably not going to be very helpful to do EK. At that point, it's like, how can I just take on the sensation of this in bite-sized chunks, right? Like little by little, just like feel it. But for me, it's like if I'm going to do that, I need to be in a room by myself, quiet, dark, because I get overstimulated. And then bit by bit, just like trusting, allowing, feeling, relaxing into it. So, yes, but like I can definitely, yeah, because it's like I want to just get off on this. I just want to like fix it, make it better. Yeah.
Right, so that then EK becomes another form of avoidance. I was asking, um, the question of when do you know that you have the capacity to do EK versus when you're trying to use it as a form of avoidance. Yeah. Lucy said that that's come up a lot with clients over the years.
Okay, so for example, because I am the way I am, I'll just tell my experience. Okay. If I'm like really sad, if I'm like really crying and sad about something, I don't need to be saying to myself, but it's actually okay. And I actually really like it. And this is just what my subconscious really wants for me. That's not helpful. What is helpful at that time is to just really be with the sad and just really be like, oh, it's coming. Here it is. It's coming. Like I kind of treat the sad like a big barf. And like sometimes it's accompanied by a story, like, you can stick your finger down your throat to make yourself puke. Like sometimes when there's the big feeling, I'm like, yes, what I need to get off on is the raw thing that wants to come out now. And that, in my opinion, is a form of EK, but it's not the getting off on the situation it's getting off on the emotion that gets to come out of me when I tell myself that, and being really present and just like until I have no more of that to puke up right now. Once that's happened several times and I'm good, then I can start thinking about the other kind of like, well, I see. Then I have then I've kind of cleared the capacity through my system. I've gotten that out of my tank, so to speak. And now I can do the other thing with more presence because I'm not full of all of that realness about it. And I really do think that that getting off on that realness is the essence of EK in many ways.
I'm so obsessed with what you said because you have just put into words something that I have been trying to communicate for like 9 years. Yes, it's a barf. It's
It's
a
a barf.
You have to barf out the emotion. And then
Story is the
through.
finger down your throat. The
Layla,
story is the thing that you're using to get. I just
yeah.
need this to come out. And sometimes it's rage, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's panic. You know what I mean? Like it's something. Yes.
How have you been holding back this metaphor?
I don't know.
I
I
have
think it was
needed
because
this
we
so
started
many
talking
times.
about capacity and it made me think of a tank. And then it just happened. I don't know. I never thought of it before. I never
I've
thought of it
needed
that way
this.
until
I've
just now.
needed this, Layla, because it's so genius. Because I'm always trying to explain how it's like you have to move it to get it like through, but then it's like
It's
done, and
just like a throw up
it's
where there's
exactly
like
like
the
puking.
nausea is horrible. The nausea is horrible. You're like, oh my God, I have to go to the toilet. And then once it comes out, you're like, oh my God, thank God. And
You got it
sometimes
out of your system, and then
because
you
you got
don't
it
feel like you need
out.
to puke anymore. The nausea goes away, and maybe you have a couple more little smaller waves. Yes. Okay, sorry. Whoa, amazing.
This is why I love getting on. This is why I think I think this is one of the key turning point for people in their practice of EK is you are not mentally trying to get off on the concept of the situation and change the concept of the situation in your mind so that it is pleasing to you. I do think that there are situations where the way you're seeing it is making you miserable and there's nothing wrong with the situation itself. And in that case, like learning to see it from a way in which it is pleasing to you is absolutely the correct remedy for that situation. There are other situations where that's not the case, where something is like damaging and like not feeling good. Yeah. And I think the only way to truly get off on those hard situations is to get off on, i.e., be fully present to and willing to experience what the situation actually feels like for you. Because one of the reasons that we stay in the yucky yuck yuck is because we don't even actually allow ourselves to know what it's feeling like. So then we
We
can't
actually
respond appropriately.
Yeah, and we actually use up a lot of capacity trying to repress things.
Hmm.
Like, people don't even we use so much of our capacity to, like, shove things away and just, like, keep them down, hold in the vomit.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think Danny was speaking to, right? Like the accumulation. You keep holding it, keep holding it, keep holding it, keep holding it, keep holding it. It doesn't go away. You're just continuing to hold it, and you're using more of you to hold it.
And also for this reason, sometimes we have to give ourselves and others grace when they puke in our presence because they are overly full and they can no longer hold it. And at the same time, part of being a member of civilization and relationships with other human beings is learning where to do sensitive, somewhat biologically hazardous activities like throwing up. You know what I mean? To extend the metaphor, we can't just do that in the living room in front of everyone while we're watching TV.
Yeah.
Obviously, sometimes we're violently ill, but that's not just how we handle that as a matter of course, And I think that's the same thing with our own capacity. It's the same thing with our capacity. Certainly with my little children, when their capacity gets too much, we're not trying to make them act polite. We're not trying to, enforce any norms because he hasn't eaten and he needs to just eat. He doesn't need to, you know what I'm saying? Like we
Mhm.
don't we
Mhm.
respect people's capacity. We can't, in my opinion, the world would be a better place if we stopped punishing people for their behaviors that happened when they were far outside their capacity. That is like a clear rehabilitation and like support need, a need for punishment.
Mhm. Yeah.
And there's so much nuance here, actually, because it's like we need people to learn skills to handle themselves, function, be able to hold their puke until they get to a good place to puke it out. And also we need to have the nuance to understand, like, they can't hear that right now. Like, this is not the time to teach them to do that. Like, they puked in the living room. We're not gonna yell at them for puking on the couch because they had no ability to control that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. And also, I like this episode is called puking. What was I going to say? Oh, and also we need to one thing that I see in discourse about relationships is people confusing the overwhelming urge that can't be helped with the unwillingness to learn how to do it properly. I think there's a huge difference in people behaving away because they temporarily exceeded their capacity and people refusing to learn how to manage their capacity at all. Those are different issues, in my opinion, and they need to be handled with nuance.
Yeah, absolutely agree. You don't blame a baby for pooping in their we're going now from puke to poop. Um, in their diaper when they're 1 or 2 or 3. Like, if they have an accident when they're doing pull-ups, they're learning, they're building their capacity to use a toilet. Yeah, it's inappropriate if, like, a 10-year-old is still pooping their pants or a 20-year-old in
Something's
particular
wrong.
is still pooping their pants. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Yeah.
I mean, I know that sometimes I am a 40-year-old woman who poops my pants, if we're extending the metaphor. I know that I am. So I don't want, if we're extending the metaphor, I just don't want to come across as like none of us would ever poop our pants. I do. I know I do. So I want to forgive myself, but I'm learning. I'm
Recognizing
better than I
Layla
used to be. I'm better than I used to be.
recognizing, Layla, that you are much better at metaphors than I am. Let's say instead that the body signals of that happening, we know what those body signals are, right? Like,
Yes,
we
we
have
do.
much
Yes.
greater control over those body signals. And
Awareness. We
so
have awareness of
awareness,
them.
and thus we have more, not all, but we have more choice around how to engage with those body signals. Is that better?
And accountability and responsibility. And
Yeah.
I do think that it is the case that, like, basically when I see people who have been brought up in situations of a lot of violence or dysfunction or, like, of any kind, then you do find that you arrive at a ripe age and you might not be aware of the signs that other people are, like, aware of, and you seem a little odd. And I think that's what ends up getting people into trouble with the law. And it's just, anyway, this the trauma all the way down, the capacity all the way down, the learning all the way down. And it just brings me to a place of compassion and grace is, I guess, where I go. For all of us pooping our pants occasionally.
Yeah, I think the metaphor stands. If you don't want to be pooping your pants at 40, it just happens sometimes because problems.
Because problems. Exactly. Yes, exactly. I'm not intentionally pooping my pants to make sure that my family members know how stinky it could be. That's a very different situation. That's different psychology.
Hmm.
This is a metaphor that just keeps on giving.
It does. It's true. Anyway, and capacity, we can all build it. That's just, we can all learn. We can all learn to exercise it and understand how to use it.
Yeah, but I do love what you're saying about trauma and like we're raised in different ways. We are raised with different capacities. Some of us are given way more resources from the get-go than others of us. Yeah, so not to shame anyone for where they are in their capacity.
I just watched
And
a very touching documentary that made me, like, to extend the metaphor, like, the main character in this true crime documentary was a woman, and I was just, to extend the metaphor, nobody in her family was ever potty trained. She never thought that potty training was a thing that needed to happen. So she just went her whole life pooping everywhere, getting in trouble. So it's just interesting, it's just, I mean, I think compassion and understanding is required from the human race towards our brothers and sisters.
actually a lot of research around the concept of resilience. Like, why do
Hmm.
some people have incredible resilience? They've looked at like Holocaust survivors, and it's like a lot of them were not broken. I mean, they were in like the worst fucking possible imaginable situations, and like their spirit did not break. And other people can go through similar experiences or even like things that we would consider less horrible or less traumatizing and be broken by them. And it's like some people have this resilience. And like what that is it's like I see my understanding of it is like that resilience is like the ability to manage your own capacity and like stay with yourself and just like manage, take care of yourself in those situations. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of research trying to understand like why do some people have this resilience, and we're all just different. And there's also the case that like what a Holocaust survivor might fucking come through that and like grow as, and become and not let it break them. And then something else completely different could be so much hard, you know what I mean? And then maybe they don't have the capacity for something else that's on a totally different end of the spectrum. And so we're all so different in what is going to like outside of our capacity and how we're going to manage ourselves in different situations. And I just like personally, often I consider myself to be like a very high capacity person. And then I'm just like constantly getting humbled in my life, like just humbled.
Lucy,
Well,
go ahead.
I want to speak to the role of EK in this resilience that you're talking about, because I personally think that EK is a resilience generator. And, especially when you're doing it the way that we're talking about doing it on this episode, and in my opinion, this is the way. Um, is that part of the EK practice is not just being with the feeling, right? It's the awareness that who we really are is a eternal, immortal, inviolable, undamageable, just pure, beautiful thing that, I mean, not even thing, being, essence, presence, that can never be tarnished in any way and is endlessly curious and willing. Curious and willing. That's what its essence is. And with that bravery, with that, and maybe it's loving as well, we might venture. And when we have connection to that part of ourselves, it becomes much easier to feel what we feel in response to what's happening without being broken by it. Right? Like we're tapped into a ground that lets us, like our human form, you're right, our human form really can't bear. It can't bear a lot. But if we learn how to tap in to the what I really am, the infinite, uh, we can pass right through, and we can then we make it. I think that that's been my experience.
I wanna see if I can, like, connect those 2 things together. Lucy, I think I saw this is you were jogging my memory talking about the Holocaust survivors. If I remember correctly, part of, what they seemed to discover around this sense of resiliency was that the people who survived, were people who were sharing resources, who were there, like, supporting each other, helping each other, instead of the individuals who were just completely trying to survive on their own. Um, so this sense of, uh this is bigger than just me, is what actually builds resiliency. Thinking about that from a concept of capacity and some of the stuff we do in our community where we're sharing nervous system, again, it gives us a bigger, a larger being to process through and to support with. And yeah, I think Layla also then connects us to that larger sense of being a part of, an other, a being, some whatever your spiritual ilk towards that is, gives you that relationship to that bigger thing than just uh this body, this specific incarnation, I guess. Avatar, this specific avatar that we are in this one life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well said,
like, it
Dana.
makes me think of the all of these things are, like, how we not disassociate, but disidentify from the little s self,
Mm.
right? Like, where you can come into, like, while my little s self is important, it's not the only thing. And in fact, there's something far greater, far more, far more than anything this sweet little self could think was important. And yeah, I think just it's getting into like, yeah, the witness, right? That's maybe could be what you call this sense of not little self, is being aware that I am not the only thing. There are many, many things, and all are important. I don't think I'm giving words to that exactly the way I mean it, but that's what came
Yeah.
up in that
I
moment.
wanna, like, name something we're talking about here, though, because what we're actually talking about when we talk about like stepping into this sort of like bigger spiritual perspective is a dissociative technique. It's a very helpful form of dissociating from like the hardships of the current moment and getting a bigger perspective. And dissociative techniques are so helpful and useful, like from a clinical psychology standpoint, right? Like we can kind of step outside ourselves and see a bigger perspective, and it can help us um kind of like not get so caught up in the thing that's happening. Like it can help us kind of remove ourselves a little bit. And this is why, though, because dissociation can be dangerous if you do it too much, right? And so, this is why we're always coming back to like feeling the body, being in the body, being present with what's coming up, like feeling your having that, letting those emotional waves come over you and puking them out. And so, it's kind of like this titration, like back and forth between being present, feeling what's present, being in yourself, in your body, and also giving yourself that perspective, giving yourself that and those reminders of like, this is, I'm part of something bigger, I'm part of something greater than myself, and this isn't everything. And also, I have to feel what's coming up, I have to move what's true for me. And so, it's this kind of what we're always talking about, I feel like, on this podcast, is moving back and forth between these two truths that because we are, as humans, balancing this like very physical and very spiritual, like we are the conjoining of these two things. And so this is how we can work with ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what resilience is being able to move from relation to dysregulation to regulation to dysregulation, because no one's ever always regulated. Like you've gotta dysregulate sometimes too. Resilience is being able to always swing back.
Well, exactly. And you're going to get dysregulated. And so you're practicing handling it. You're practicing holding it and coming back, bringing yourself back into regulation and being okay with the fact that shit got crazy for a minute. We lost our shit, but that's okay. You know, I made it through. I made it to the other side. And it's not always funny. Like I'm smiling. It's not always funny.
It's definitely sometimes like, what? Just sometimes that's that.
Yeah, this conversation is making me think like, obviously the infinite has capacity for anything, but also like why? Like why continue in a situation that you like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think
Just
people
because
sometimes people get a hold of the tool of EK and are like, haha, now I can endure this situation that I have been suffering in. And then it's like, yeah, you can, but like, why? That's actually not the, I think obviously some things just are fixed by a change in perspective, and other things, why do you need to change your perspective on that? Why are you trying to make that okay? Do you know what I'm saying?
Dude, this is
Like,
something
sure, you
I've
can.
done to
And
myself.
for myself, I'm like, oh, it's because I just want to prove that I can. That's weird. That's a weird flex that I'm doing.
Well, I've been,
I
like,
can
totally
suffer.
we can, like, gaslight ourselves, or I don't know if gaslight is quite the word, but it's, like, convince ourselves that I'm so spiritually
Mhm.
elevated. I should be able to be happy in any situation, and so it shouldn't matter. And this is where I come back to, like, but there is kind of a truth here, and this ain't it. It's like, but I love what you're saying, Layla. I think it's so important because I really did used to tell myself, like, I should be able to be happy in any situation because that's what it means to be a spiritually evolved person. And it's like, but if you're so spiritually evolved, you should be able to
To get
handle removing yourself from the situation that isn't good for you or that doesn't feel true.
You are a person who also deserves compassion and care. No.
I like to speak really I do like the language of calling it, like, truth because it's like, sometimes what's true isn't what we're just drawn towards. It's like we are magnetized towards that thing, and sometimes on paper, it's not what, like, is best or, like, the smartest or the wisest or you know what I mean? It's like, it's just what's true. Like, it's what we want for some reason.
In human design, they often use the term correct. And so it's in the sense of like, that's what is most within the flow of this being and the way that they are made up and the being as an individual. Like, that's just like, this is what's in the most flow of what your experience in this life is going to be. And you can absolutely go against the flow or you can go with the flow. So, like, is this thing correct for me or am I going against the flow a little bit?
Yeah, because there is kind of this, like, hard to reconcile truth that sometimes we do get in situations that are really shitty and really challenging, and that is part of our, like, personal evolutionary process, and so even though it's not, like, right you like, it would be really hard to make the state that, like, this was what was right for me, but it's like but it was true, like, I needed to go through that experience, or that was what was correct, even though it was wrong and it was bad, like, if you're assigning valence, but when we kind of I like to sort of try to transcend the world of valence, transcend the idea that, like, bad is good, because those are such, like, absurd, subjective terms, but it's like, yeah, what's in the flow or what is true, and sometimes what is true is to get into some really fucked up stuff and then learn some really fucking important lessons. Anyway, we've digressed from capacity.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
I like that we're talking about, I mean, I just kind of want to return to the potty metaphors a little bit maybe
Just can't
because I like talking about capacity because I think that people can get judgmental about like the things that are correct for them. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes because often the things that are correct for them are not perfect. And so the things that are correct for them include dysregulation, include, you know, having to use the bathroom and excuse yourself, include, losing it. And I think sometimes it's funny, we're using a eating disorder metaphor. So excuse me to anyone who's triggered by it. I am a recovered bulimic. So I'm going to continue using this familiar metaphor. I think some people try to treat their bulimia by becoming anorexic because if you have nothing in your stomach, you can't possibly throw up. So I think sometimes people in relationships, once there's been so much dysregulation in the history of a person, they get to a point where they can't tolerate any dysregulation, and then it can become isolating, right? It can become isolating, um, and it can you can think that you're healed because you're like, I have no drama in my life, I'm fine. And for a while, it's good to like remove oneself, but we can't stay there. Like we have to be with others. And so we have to remember that, like, yeah, people aren't perfect. Dysregulation happens. We cannot be going like sometimes we have to endure the imperfection and our own imperfection of others. And I worry that with all of the like, psychological speech and like spiritual purity and like spiritual ascension and like whatever zeitgeist there is. I just want to speak for like the shadow of like sometimes the things that are correct for you include the poopy things, and like running from that is not virtue. It may be anorexia. Do you know what I'm saying? Am I making sense?
Yes, I know
And
exactly
Yeah.
there's a
what
lot of discernment that's necessary, and that's why we, like, need other people in our lives because it can be a little bit confusing sometimes, I think. Do you know what I'm saying? Am I
I
being clear,
I
or am I being too
absolutely know
shady?
I absolutely know what you're saying, and I'm gonna give an example. Many years
Thank you.
ago, I had a bodywork client who, it I'm just gonna say had PTSD. Very clearly. I'm not going to tell you why I know that, but it was very clear they had PTSD. Even they came in telling me this. So then they went to a Buddhist retreat for 5 days, and they came back and I was like, how you doing? And they're like, I'm so great. I figured it out. I'm so calm. Now my kid can't piss me off and trigger me and get to me anymore. Because I'm just so calm, I figured it out. Because I went and was silent, alone with a group of people, being silent for 5 or 7 days. And so, and then I think I saw them a month or two later. And of course, it didn't work because they had taken themselves out of their life into, yeah, you can absolutely be an ascetic and think that you are evolved, that you have figured it out, that, you never have to feel anything else again. You don't have to deal with other people's messiness ever again. And you can if you spend the rest of your life at, some in a cave or at some sort of, I mean, I don't think actually even if you were at a retreat center, you would be able to avoid relating to
Resist.
other humans.
Be able to resist the urge.
Yeah, exactly. But all of that, you really see what tools you have learned when you come back into relating with all of the other beautiful, messy humans that are around you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Layla, because I do feel like, um, I don't know, I don't spend a whole lot of time reading internet like chat threads, but I have seen a few where it's like some woman comes on and she's like, "My husband did this," and half the people are like, "You should never speak to him again," and the other half are like, defending him, and it's just like it's so extreme. And we do, and it's like what you're saying, it's like we can get ourselves into a frenzy of thinking that any kind of like imperfection is extremely like cannot be allowed at all. And it's like we're all
Forgivable.
on an evolutionary growth path through life. We're all learning and growing, and part of that is like you got to get in the mud to
You have to love the raw edges off in the like rock polisher of like bumping. There's some bumping. There's some rubbing involved in that burnishing of our souls. You
And
know?
I think that's
yeah.
what I love about EK is because I get to be in relationship with the rough parts of myself, and thus when I see it in other people, like you're saying, then I'm not in the superiority holier than thou state. I can be like, oh, yeah, I have that too, even though I do
Me
love
too.
superiority at times. And I see it in other people sometimes now. And I can go, instead of being like, who do they think they are? I'd be like, yes, yes, I also have felt the electric tingle of superiority.
Totally. Yeah. Exactly. You can get the contact high. You can feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I mean, for me, like that is you keep talking about this idea of compassion, Layla, and I think that's where that real compassion comes from.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, it's when you can look at somebody acting badly and be like, "Me too. Yeah, I do. Yep."
And also not take it personally, like, not have to make it about you,
Mhm.
because I feel like
What
that's a lot of
other
people it was what, Holly?
No, I was just saying, like, what other people do is really not about me. Like, I may have popped something in them, but other people's behavior is not about me. And that's the hardest thing for me to remember sometimes. So that's just a really great reminder, like, oh yeah, it's not about me. Like you see it a lot in the work that we do, right? Like someone popping off at you and you're like, oh, touch something there. Got it. Noted. And like, oh, and I've definitely popped off at someone. Like, oh, yeah, yeah. It was not about their behaviors at all. It was about what was happening in me and the fact that I couldn't hold it.
Exactly, and we've come full circle back to capacity. 'Cause we can, like, accidentally pop each other's capacities, and then, um they respond and we're like, yeah, gotta just remember that wasn't about you. Okay. Is there anything else we want to share before we close out this episode?
Oh,
I
please.
mean, yeah, I guess I would just say as that gorgeous reminder that capacity is neutral. Like it's shifting from day to day, and that it's whatever capacity you're at any given moment is correct, because that's where you're at. And it's okay also, like we all have all done it. We've all overridden our capacity in some way or the other, done the thing that we couldn't do but did it anyways. So I guess it also speaks to the glory that is humans, is that we can, when we need to, do hard things that we aren't able to do. And also we can surrender to the fact, like, I can't do that today, and I'm not sorry.
Yeah, and I feel like, I think it's so helpful to think in terms of this because, like the last thing we just talked about, just for like a little second there, it's like when you see that somebody is beyond their capacity, when you're thinking in terms of capacity, you don't take things personally because you're like, "Oh, they're just at their capacity." And then you can hold them with compassion. And it totally changes the dynamic, but also in yourself. You when you start to look through the lens of noticing this, you can really take better care of yourself. You can hold yourself better. You can show up better in your relationships. You can see what's going on in the people around you. You can be a better parent, like we were talking about children. And so I just I think part of the reason why we wanted to talk about this today is because it is a very helpful lens and something that most of us like we haven't considered. Like we didn't consider that's a thing. Like I mean, we talk a lot about overstimulation, right? And that's kind of what this is, right? That's kind of what this is. It's overstimulation. Um and some of that's coming from like external stimulation and some of it is coming from internal stimulation. And so just acknowledging that you can like meet your capacity just in anything can we don't have control over it. Do not perfectly control ourselves. We never will be able to. And so we just kind of have to submit a little bit to the ride and take the best possible care of ourselves that we can in the situations that we find ourselves in and have grace for ourselves and each other.
Yeah. Yep. This is making me feel like, yeah, I love I really love thinking about capacity as like the meta layer, because I think sometimes when we are arguing or conflicting with people, we get stuck on the emotional and cognitive content, and it might be worth saying, wait a minute, is there even the capacity for this conversation? I notice the signs of overcapacity, which means we have to stop. I'm very bad at doing that. I know, because once my capacity is over, that's not how I respond. But I need to build the capacity for responding that way, because it's the correct move. And it's also how we just like keep everyone safe. It's how we keep everyone as like our children and our relationships as safe as possible, is when we respect the capacity that everyone is at, and we don't expect people to respond beyond their capacity. As much as the other stuff underneath that's in the capacity that we're trying to hold in it might be important to us, like that meta level has to be there first.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like that moment when you get into like an argument or something and then later and then your mind goes blank and you're like, "Why couldn't I think of the thing to say? It's so obvious." And it's like, "Well, you didn't have the capacity in the moment." Like
Yeah,
that's
or
what it is.
sometimes in, like in my household, a very common thing that happens is somebody's, I'll just say my husband's capacity is low because he's been working hard, and, just his capacity for the noise of the children is different than mine, whatever. The clutter strikes his nervous system differently. So he's more maxed out in his capacity. Something happens, and then, that's really frustrating, and he is upset. And this is this is, I'm guessing, personal in this part of it. Is like, I need to remember, this conversation is reminding me that in those moments, instead of being upset with him, I need to be like, got it, go take a break, just go, and not be like, why are you not at capacity right now? That's not fair. It's really not fair.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I can relate to his that experience that he like on his side, like I get overstimulated by like clutter and noise and like stress from work. And then I come out of my office where I've been in my little work bubble all day and it's just like chaos. And I'm just like, okay, this is a new setting. And then yeah, anyways, so I can relate.
Yeah. Also, like, I think that's part of the work in relationships, is like, yeah, if one person has capacity and the other person doesn't, great. But like, we also need to talk about like, how are we each managing our capacities? And the capacities are a different conversation than any other emotional content. You know what I mean? Like, They're its
Yeah,
own
it's like a
thing to be
separate theory.
monitoring.
Yeah.
Yes.
The amount of the emotional response is a marker of the capacity, but it's not the actual capacity.
Yeah. I think we're using capacity in a bunch of different ways, but yes, yes. Anyway, I said I was complete 10 minutes ago, but more than wanted to come, but now I do feel complete.
Well, thank you, lovely ladies. This was so fun. I love you all so much.
Same as always.
And we
So
will do it
much.
again.
See you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Penetrate Radio. I have a free guided existential kink practice. If you are somebody who is new to this work, if you're new to EK, if you haven't read the book, if you're just not a reader, or if you need a refresher, you can get this. You can download it right now for free and use it to learn how to do EK and just follow along as a guided practice. It is meant for beginners. So I just want to let you know that that's available, and you can find it at the link in the description. Also in the link in the description, you can find more information about our membership Dominion, a field of radical approval. Dominion is less than the cost of a single manicure each month, and it's just a wonderful place to do this work in community. We have seen time and time again that being witnessed and witnessing others in this work is wildly helpful and validating. The last thing I want to mention is that a lot of our guests talk about the coach certification program Penetrate that they went through with myself and Layla. I want to let you know that we are going to be offering that same program again in 2027, and you can find a wait list in that same link if you're interested in getting information about that when it becomes available. And I think this goes without saying, but if you see anyone else offering a program called Penetrate that is also a coach certification program related to this kind of work, that is absolutely not the same program that Layla and I have taught and that the people in this podcast are talking about when they talk about our coach certification program, Penetrate. So I just wanted to make that super clear. Layla and I share a lot of hard-won wisdom through that program. So if we're not the ones teaching it and offering it, then it is definitely not the same program. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Penetrate Radio, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao.